Betrayal. The word alone is enough to summon the ghosts. The slow tightening of the chest. The image of a face once trusted, now hollowed by deceit. You replay their words in your mind, like a broken record that refuses to end. But listen carefully. What you call betrayal is not an exception of human nature. It is its most honest confession. We imagine that trust is sacred, that love, friendship, or loyalty are foundations upon which existence rests. But look closer. Beneath every promise lies a trembling will, seeking only itself. Every "I will never hurt you" is a prayer whispered by a creature that cannot help but serve its own hunger. We do not betray because we are evil. We betray because we are. The wound burns because we believed in permanence. We thought someone could stand beside us, unshaken by time, by circumstance, by their own shifting desires. But the world is not built on constancy. It moves like the sea, restless, indifferent, endlessly consuming the shores we build our faith upon. To be betrayed is to see for one dreadful instant that the ocean was never still, it was only pretending. And so, the pain of betrayal is not merely emotional, it is metaphysical. It is the collapse of a world. It is the realization that reality itself is unreliable, that behind every gesture of love, every vow of loyalty, there hides the silent grin of necessity. They could not help what they did, and you could not help believing that they could. You stand now in the debris of your illusions. Every memory that once warmed you turns cold in your hands. You see how your devotion was never truly shared. It was mirrored for a time, perhaps even sincerely, but the reflection has faded. They have turned away, not out of malice, but out of movement. There will found a new object, and like water seeking a lower place, it flowed elsewhere. You want to call it betrayal. But what if it was simply life doing what it always does? Changing, consuming, devouring itself. Look at nature. The snake sheds its skin, leaving the old one behind without regret. The tree drops its leaves, indifferent to the memory of summer. The lion kills the gazelle, not because it hates, but because it must live. Yet we, in our vanity, demand that love should defy the same law. We demand loyalty from the will, when the will itself knows no rest. Perhaps this is why betrayal feels so infinite, because it opens a door we wish had never existed. A door into the chaos beneath the human smile, into the truth that our happiness depends on illusions carefully maintained. When one illusion breaks, it is not the person who dies, it is the world we built through them. And so, betrayal is not the act of another, it is the awakening of your perception. You did not lose them, you lost your blindness. For most of our lives, we live surrounded by comforting lies. That people mean what they say, that love endures, that goodness prevails. But betrayal is the moment the curtain falls, and you see the stagehands rearranging the scenery. The play was never real. The actor who swore eternal faithfulness was only reading his part until the next act required a new emotion. Yes, they betrayed you, but only because the will inside them demanded a new pleasure, a new escape, a new form of affirmation. And the will does not ask for permission, it devours whatever stands between it and its next satisfaction. So do not look at them with hatred. Look at them as you would look at lightning, sudden, bright, destructive, but innocent in its necessity. They were the storm that revealed your roof was fragile. They were the truth that ended your fantasy. It hurts because you believed the fantasy more than the truth. You believed that love could conquer the will. You believed that words could fix the chaos beneath consciousness. You believed that another person could make your world stable. But existence does not permit stability. It offers only movement, decay, and momentary illusions of peace. You thought they betrayed you once. But the truth is, life has been betraying you all along. Through loss, through change, through death. Every joy you have ever felt carried the seed of its own undoing. What you call betrayal is simply that undoing made visible. You see now how fragile it all was. Every bond, every promise, every hope. The world you trusted was made of glass, and they were merely the hand that dropped it. And as it shatters, you hear the first honest sound in a long time. The sound of truth breaking illusion. Do not rush to forgive. Do not rush to condemn. Stand still in the ruin and see. This pain is not punishment, it is revelation. It is existence whispering, "Now you see me as I am." You are not merely grieving a person. You are grieving the death of your illusion. The illusion that others could save you from the loneliness of being conscious. No one can. They never could. And yet, how beautiful it was to believe. So now, what remains? Not faith, not vengeance, not the childish cry for justice. Only this, a slow awakening to necessity. The understanding that to live among wills is to live among storms. That betrayal is not the end of the story, it is the removal of its disguise. Pause. Listen to the silence that follows. Perhaps betrayal is not the breaking of a bond, but the unveiling of its nature. Every betrayal begins long before the act. It begins in the machinery of life itself. Before any hand strikes, before any word deceives, the will has already moved. The betrayal you felt was only the visible ripple of an invisible tide, the will's blind compulsion beneath all appearances. Schopenhauer called it the will to live, that ceaseless force, pulsing beneath every heart, driving every creature to seek, to consume, to persist. It does not rest, it does not reason, and it does not care for morality. It wants only to continue itself, through hunger, through lust, through ambition, through love. And in that wanting, it will sacrifice anything, even those it once adored. We like to imagine that we choose, that we act from freedom. But our choices are strings pulled by this ancient marionette called the will. We do not command it. We serve it, dressed in illusions of virtue and choice. When they betrayed you, it was not them who acted. It was the will-blind, ancient, mechanical, a force as indifferent as gravity, as relentless as fire. They did not decide to wound you. They were drawn to the next satisfaction, as iron is drawn to a magnet. And you once did the same. Every time you reached for comfort, for approval, for love, you too obeyed the same invisible master. This is the tragedy. We suffer at the hands of others who are obeying the same hunger that governs us. Each of us is both victim and instrument of the same eternal compulsion. Look closely, and you will see the will everywhere disguised as passion, as affection, as purpose. When we say, "I love you," what we often mean is, "My will find satisfaction in your presence." When we say, "I forgive you," what we often mean is, "My will seeks relief from its own torment." Even compassion hides the will's cunning desire to feel superior or at peace. It hides within every moral claim, every noble act, every word of comfort. The will is not wicked, it is merely blind. That is why betrayal shocks us so deeply. It exposes this blindness. It shows us that what we thought was loyalty was only temporary alignment of two wills whose hungers briefly matched. The moment one changes, the union collapses, and we call it betrayal. The truth is harsher. It was never stable to begin with. No love is immune, no friendship permanent. Even parents and children, bound by blood, are slaves to the same internal tides. There is affection, yes, but beneath it, the will, moving, adjusting, seeking new equilibrium. Every living thing devours something. Every desire consumes its object, and then moves on. This is why love so often turns to indifference, and indifference to contempt, not because hearts are evil, but because the will tires. Once it has fed, it hungers elsewhere. And yet, we call it betrayal, as if there had ever been a contract with eternity. There wasn't. There was only a temporary truce between two hungers. When the truce breaks, we suffer, and in our suffering, we reveal what we truly wanted. Permanence in a world that permits none. You wanted them to stay, to love as you loved, to see as you saw, but no one can. Not because they choose not to, but because the will does not allow it. The will is a tyrant that governs even saints. It drives one person to betray, another to cling, another to despair. And every action, noble or cruel, is merely its expression. You may say, "But I would never have done what they did." Oh, perhaps not in this form, no, but your will betrays in other ways, through neglect, through self-deception, through the thousand small cruelties of survival. The difference is only of degree, not of nature. When the will desires peace, it becomes the monk renouncing the world. When it desires pleasure, it becomes the lover or the liar. When it desires recognition, it becomes the saint or the betrayer, whichever feeds it faster. But it is the same hunger wearing different masks, and thus no one truly forgives or offends. There is only the endless dance of forces colliding, each obeying its inner law. This is why Schopenhauer wrote that life is a pendulum, swinging between pain and boredom. Pain when the will is denied, boredom when the will is satisfied. And in both, there is no rest. So ask yourself, when you loved, was it love Or was it the will's thirst for affirmation? When you were betrayed, was it injustice or the natural consequence of two wills colliding and diverging? The answer strips away our illusions of control. But in that stripping, there is strange liberation. Because to see the mechanism is to stop mistaking it for meaning. To see the will behind the knife is to cease calling the wound personal. Quote, "You were not betrayed as a person, you were enacted upon as a phenomenon. You are part of the same machinery. You too will betray, in some form or another, not out of malice, but necessity." Yes, this sounds cruel, but truth is cruel only to those who refuse to see it. Once you see, it becomes neutral, cold, clear, absolute, like a mountain under the winter Sunday. Forgiveness, then, is not a moral act. It is a recognition that there was never anything else possible. That to expect loyalty from a creature governed by the will is to expect the ocean to hold its waves still. It cannot. It moves. Even as you weep upon its shore, forgive them if you must, but not with the naivete of religion or moral comfort. Forgive them as a philosopher forgives the storm, because you understand it could not do otherwise. Because you see that resistance only multiplies suffering. To hate is to continue the illusion that someone could have chosen differently. To forgive is to understand that no one ever could. This is the dark mercy of knowledge. When you see the will clearly, you cease to demand the impossible. You cease to beg the world for justice. You cease to worship illusion. And for the first time, the wound stops asking for healing. It simply is, raw, unadorned, true. In this stillness, a strange compassion appears, not the sentimental kind that seeks to fix, but the lucid kind that understands. You begin to pity them, not from superiority, but from recognition. They too are slaves. They betray because they must. They lie because they fear truth. They grasp because they are hollow. And you are no different, save that you see it now. The will lives through you too. It hungers through your pain, your longing, your memory of the wound. Even your suffering is its way of keeping itself alive. The ego says, "I am hurt," quote, but the will says, "Good, now I have another form of striving." To transcend betrayal, you must transcend the will's game altogether, not by revenge, not by denial, but by seeing, by standing outside the theater of desire, watching the puppets dance, and knowing that you are both puppet and observer. You ask, then what is love? Love is the will's most elegant disguise. It promises union but delivers longing. It lures you into the sweetest captivity so that nature may continue her play through you. That is why love feels divine at first and demonic at last. It begins as salvation, ends as servitude. It begins with, "I cannot live without you," and ends with, "I must escape you." In both, the will laughs. And betrayal, it is simply the will changing its object. What was once adored becomes indifferent. The light shifts, and the stage resets. You call it heartbreak. Nature calls it necessity. The wise do not hate the betrayer. They see through the play. They know the same force drives both victim and offender, saint and sinner, lover and stranger. They look upon the chaos and whisper, "So it is." And in that whisper, the will begins to lose its grip. For when you no longer fight its movement, when you stop demanding meaning from its cruelty, something strange occurs. A quietness, a space between the hunger and the act. A moment of freedom, not from life, but from illusion. This is what the ancient mystics call detachment, though it is not indifference. It is the understanding that nothing belongs to you, because nothing is stable enough to be owned. Not love, not loyalty, not even your own thoughts. All is flux, all is movement. And within that movement, to demand permanence is to invite suffering. You were betrayed, yes, but the deeper betrayal was your belief that things could be otherwise. The will behind the knife was also the will behind your hope. Both are part of the same tragic machinery. So now you stand here bleeding, but awake. The pain remains, but it is no longer aimless. It points you toward vision, toward seeing the structure beneath all human tenderness and cruelty alike. The curtain has fallen, the actors are gone. Only the mechanism hums the endless movement of wanting, suffering, becoming, and perishing. You can curse it, or you can watch it. And in the watching, you begin to withdraw your obedience. You cease to worship. You cease to chase. You cease to beg for permanence from what is by nature transient. And slowly, the will confused by your indifference loosens its chains. Pause here. Let the silence fill you. You were not betrayed by a monster, the philosopher says. You were awakened by necessity. You were betrayed once. But step into the world outside, and you will see betrayal has become a business. Everywhere, the pain you feel has been packaged, priced, and sold back to you as comfort. Modernity, in its infinite cunning, has learned to profit from despair. Once, pain was sacred. It was endured in silence, contemplated beneath the weight of stars, absorbed into the solitude of the soul. Now it is monetized. Now it is marketed under soft light and pastel tones, disguised as healing, growth, self-love, goruke. 1,000 self-help prophets whisper to you, forgive quickly, move on, vibrate higher. But none of them tell you the truth that pain is not meant to be erased, but understood. They offer healing without wisdom, forgiveness without comprehension, peace without confrontation. They promise that you can return to innocence if only you buy another course, repeat another affirmation, perform another ritual of positivity. But innocence once lost cannot be bought back. And wisdom, unlike comfort, is earned only through the crucifixion of illusion. Modern culture cannot bear silence. It cannot bear the weight of raw awareness. So it builds distractions around you, songs of self-empowerment, the cult of the smiling survivor, the religion of constant improvement. It whispers, don't think too deeply, it will only make you sad, as if sadness were not the very gate to truth. The marketplace of false healing thrives on this. Fear the fear of seeing reality as it is. Because once you see it, you cannot be sold anything. You stop buying the narcotics of hope. You stop confusing noise for meaning. You stop believing that you can escape suffering through slogans. Forgiveness, too, has been converted into a commodity. You are told to forgive as a way to heal your energy, to attract abundance, to manifest peace. Quote, but this is not forgiveness. It is bargaining. It is the will disguising itself as virtue, still seeking control through the language of transcendence. It wants to feel powerful again, even in letting go. And so the modern soul forgives not from understanding, but from exhaustion. True forgiveness, if it exists, arises not from the desire to be free of pain, but from the recognition that there was never anyone to blame, that all actions are expressions of necessity. But such truth cannot be packaged into a podcast. It cannot trend on a platform. It cannot be sold as a 10-step awakening. It is too raw, too silent, too unprofitable. The age of information has not enlightened humanity. It has merely multiplied its illusions. We know more, but understand less. We speak endlessly, but say nothing. We connect with everyone, yet belong to no one. And beneath the glittering surface of screens and slogans lies the oldest truth, that no civilization can redeem the will. Scroll through the glowing rectangles of our era, and you will see modern betrayal in its purest form. The betrayal of authenticity, the betrayal of silence, the betrayal of presence. People betray not only lovers and friends, now they betray their own faces, curating masks for the anonymous gaze. Every post a performance, every smile a sale, every confession rehearsed for approval. And the self, once a private depth, has become a billboard begging for validation. We call this connection. But what it truly is mass loneliness, veiled in noise. The modern individual, starving for meaning, consumes endless inspiration and healing, like a patient chewing sugar pills to forget the disease. We worship distraction because contemplation terrifies us. For in contemplation, the illusions collapse. The crowd's laughter fades, and we are left alone with the void that all our screens conceal. Forgiveness, love, hope, these words have been stripped of gravity. They are used not to describe truth, but to avoid it. They have become decorations of the ego, spiritual cosmetics to hide the rawness of being. You are told to forgive, but never to see. You are told to love, but never to understand what love demands. You are told to hope, but never to question what it hopes for. And thus, the modern soul remains asleep, endlessly busy, endlessly medicated, endlessly betrayed. The philosopher must ask, what does society fear more, betrayal or awareness? The answer is clear, awareness. Because awareness dissolves the machinery that sustains the marketplace. The entire structure of modern life depends on you not knowing what you are. It depends on you believing that happiness is attainable, that pain is a glitch, that forgiveness is a transaction. But pain is not a glitch, it is the code itself. Betrayal is not a mistake, it is the revelation of the system's true logic. The will creates desire, desire creates suffering, and society capitalizes on both. This is why culture constantly tells you to move on. It is not compassion, it is convenience. Your sorrow disrupts the economy of distraction. A wounded person who pauses to think is a threat to the system. So they are told, heal fast, smile, get back to work. And if they cannot, they are diagnosed, medicated, or spiritually shamed for vibrating low. Because nothing frightens the modern world more than a person who sits quietly with their pain without trying to fix it. That person no longer belongs to the market. They belong to truth. Once, pain led to philosophy. Now it leads to hashtags. Once, solitude birthed wisdom. Now it breeds anxiety. Once, betrayal was a summons to reflection. Now it is content dramatized, shared, monetized. You think you are healing, but you are being harvested. Your tears fuel algorithms. Your heartbreak is recycled into advertising data. Even your silence is quantified, your solitude monetized by those who promise to end it. The betrayal has deepened. It is no longer personal, but systemic. And yet, amid this noise, the ancient truth remains unchanged. The will is still the same, still hungry, still blind, still dressed now in digital robes. You see, even our technology obeys the will. It mimics Desire infinite scroll, infinite hunger. The screen is the new mirror of the will. It reflects our restlessness, our insatiability. Each notification, a tiny promise of satisfaction. Each click, a false deliverance. And in this theater of endless motion, betrayal is no longer an event, it is a condition. The world betrays you every time it promises meaning in what is mechanical. It betrays you each time it sells happiness as a product, or healing as a service. And still, you buy. Still, you hope. Because the will cannot help itself. It feeds even on illusion, even on lies that it knows are lies. You think you are forgiving others, but in truth, you are forgiving the system for deceiving you again. You wake up betrayed by another false dawn, and still you chase the sunrise. This is the tragedy of our time. Not that people lie, but that they must lie to survive the unbearable brightness of the real. So, what remains for the one who sees through it? Isolation, yes. Disillusionment, certainly. But also the beginning of freedom. Because when you refuse the false healing, when you let pain stand unclothed, unprocessed, uncommodified, it transforms, not into joy, but into vision. Pain unexploited becomes perception. Suffering, unbranded, becomes strength of thought. The philosopher does not heal by forgetting the wound, but by gazing into it until it reveals its architecture. He sees that pain is not a flaw in the world, it is the world's pulse, and that every promise of a painless existence is the most profound betrayal of all. Modernity fears this knowledge. It fears the person who no longer needs its narcotics. It fears the quiet soul who says, I will not distract myself, I will not move on, I will not forgive until I understand. Because understanding ends consumption, and consumption is the altar of this age. So stand apart for a moment. Turn off the light of distraction. Let the silence in. Feel the raw air of truth. It will sting at first, but that sting is reality returning to your nerves. Do not rush to forgive. Do not seek to forget. Sit with the betrayal until it speaks. For the world will urge you to silence it, but the philosopher listens deeper. Betrayal is not the opposite of love. It is its fulfillment. Because love too was the will's trick, a temporary alignment that had to break. And when it breaks, the truth comes rushing in. Forgiveness that comes from clarity, not from comfort that is rare and pure. But such forgiveness is no longer moral. It is metaphysical. It forgives not the act, but the mechanism. It sees through the will, through society, through the entire masquerade of human motives. And it whispers, ah, so this is how it must be. That whisper is the beginning of wisdom. It is not joy, but it is peace's shadow. Pause again. Let this truth breathe through you. Forgiveness offered too quickly is not virtue. It is fear of seeing how fragile we are. Something changes after the third wound. After the mind has screamed, cursed, begged, and found that nothing answers. After all your prayers for justice echo back as silence. A strange calm begins to grow, not from healing, but from exhaustion. Not from forgiveness, but from comprehension. This calm is not peace. It is awareness that has outlived expectation. It is what remains when the will collapses upon itself and realizes nothing can be owned, not even love, not even loyalty. You stop asking why did they do it, and begin to ask why did I believe they couldn't? That question is the turning point, because once you see your complicity in illusion, the poison begins to lose its sting. You realize you were not merely betrayed, you were a participant in a larger delusion, the dream that the world should behave according to your hope. Lucid indifference is not cruelty, it is not numbness, it is vision without attachment. It is standing before the fire and saying, yes, it burns, without rushing to put it out. It is no longer begging existence to comfort you, but letting it be what it has always been, restless, indifferent, unpredictable. You stop expecting others to protect your illusions. You stop demanding coherence from chaos. You stop calling impermanence a crime. And for the first time, you begin to breathe. It feels strange at first, this absence of fever. For years, your soul was addicted to the intensity of wanting love, wanting justice, wanting closure. Now there is a space where wanting used to be, and it feels like a kind of death. But it is not death, it is awakening. It is the slow birth of lucid indifference. To reach this place is not to cease feeling, it is to feel without illusion. Pain remains, but it loses its narrative. You still bleed, but you no longer say, this should not be. You simply say, this is. That small change from should to is marks the beginning of inner freedom. For the will feeds on resistance. It thrives on why, on how could they, on what if. It needs you to fight, to cling, to demand, to rehearse. It cannot exist in acceptance. It withers in the presence of still observation. When you begin to see betrayal not as an event, but as a mirror of the will's nature, you become untouchable, not because you are invincible, but because you have ceased to expect otherwise. You stop personalizing the cruelty of the world. You stop seeing malice where there is only mechanism. They lied because they feared truth. They left because they were compelled to move. They hurt you because the will demanded its next satisfaction. They acted not from freedom, but from necessity. And you were drawn to them by the same law. To comprehend this fully is to look upon humanity with tragic compassion. You pity, not from pity's softness, but from knowledge. You no longer ask for fairness. You simply understand that life has no moral center, only movement, only flux. And yet, paradoxically, this understanding softens you, not toward sentiment, but toward being. You see the animal beneath every gesture, the hunger behind every word. You see the infantile will in every adult mask. And in seeing it, you cannot hate as you once did. You can still be disappointed, but not destroyed. You can still grieve, but not despair, because you know now, it was never personal. Lucid indifference is the philosopher's mercy. It is the compassion of one who has stopped demanding paradise from a world that cannot give it. It is the clarity of one who sees that everything acts according to its nature, even the hand that once wounded you. Yes, they could have done differently in theory, but theory is a luxury of those who have not seen necessity. When the moment came, they were what they were. The action followed the character, as thunder follows lightning. There was no freedom, only unfolding. To understand this is to feel the chains drop, one by one. Not from them, but from yourself. Because now you know, there is nothing to forgive. There is only to understand. Forgiveness, in the Schopenhauerian sense, is not a moral triumph. It is a metaphysical awakening. You do not forgive because you are noble, but because you finally grasp that there was never anything else to do. Forgiveness born of insight is not a gesture, it is a dissolution. The very concept of fault dissolves under the light of clarity. You no longer say, they did this to me. You say, this happened because it had to. You no longer say, I forgive them. You say, I see them. And seeing replaces the need to forgive. In this space, resentment cannot breathe. Bitterness becomes absurd, like trying to curse the tide for rising. You no longer wish the past to change, because you see that it never could have. The film could only play as it did. The actors could only say their lines. The will wrote the script, and each obeyed. So you sit quietly, not as a victim, not as a saint, but as one who finally sees the pattern. The wound remains, but it is no longer poison. It has become window transparent, open, still. And then, compassion arrives not chosen, but inevitable. You begin to feel for others, not because you want to, but because you cannot help but see their slavery. The friend who betrayed you is trapped in their own labyrinth of wanting. The stranger who deceives is driven by a fear they cannot name. The lover who left is running from the same emptiness that follows you still. How could you hate them? they are you in another disguise. This is not forgiveness. It is knowledge turned to tenderness. It is the philosopher's sorrow mixed with mercy. The mercy that comes not from goodness, but from seeing. At this stage, your solitude deepens. For most people still speak the language of illusion. They seek comfort, narrative, villains, and heroes. You seek only truth, and truth has no language gentle enough for the crowd. You will be called cold, detached, heartless. They will say you do not feel, but they do not understand. You feel everything, you simply no longer mistake it for tragedy. To them, pain is catastrophe. To you, pain is clarity. You see beauty even in the cruelty of the mechanism, the way necessity shapes every life like wind shapes stone, the way every love contains its death, every birth its decay. And yet, in this constant perishing, there is something strangely sacred. Because once you cease demanding eternity, even the fleeting becomes luminous. A glance, a gesture, a breath, enough. No more need for promises. No more hunger for fire. You are no longer at war with impermanence. You are its witness. This is the slow birth of lucid indifference, not the death of emotion, but its transfiguration. You no longer burn with rage. You glow with understanding. You no longer crave to possess. You delight in perceiving. You no longer cling. You observe. And in that observation, life loses its claws. Betrayal becomes not a wound to hide, but a teacher to thank, because through it, you were forced to confront the truth most never dare to see. That all love is conditional, that all safety is temporary, that all connection is fragile, and that in accepting these fragilities, you become unbreakable. For to see fragility clearly is to no longer fear it. To hold transience with open hands is to cease to suffer when it leaves. To understand necessity is to make peace with the cruel mercy of the real. So you stand again, where once you fell, the same world surrounds you. The same faces pass, the same songs play, but something in you has gone silent, and that silence is strength. You no longer chase meaning. You allow it to appear and vanish, like a bird on a passing wind. You begin to live as one awake among dreamers, not superior, but still, not detached, but free. And when life offers love again as it will, because the will never ceases its game, you accept it with full awareness. You say, I will love, knowing it may end. I will trust, knowing it may break. You no longer demand immortality from what is mortal. And in that humility, love becomes truer than it ever was when you believed it eternal. This is the paradox. When you stop asking life to protect you, life can no longer truly harm you. When you stop needing forgiveness, forgiveness arrives on its own. When you stop fleeing suffering, suffering begins to reveal its wisdom. Pause. Let this realization settle. The one who betrayed you was only acting out the same blindness that drives you. Now you know what this means. It is not a moral lesson. It is a mirror. A mirror that no longer wounds because you finally recognize the face it reflects. To forgive is not to absolve. It is to see clearly and to need nothing more.